All right, next up on the pod, we've got the co-founder and CRO of SIFT, my man, Zach Wright. Zach, happy Friday. Good morning. How you doing, brother?
Feeling good, man. Thanks for having me, Tom. Excited for the weekend, but I've had this one circled on my calendar for a while. I love your podcast and really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it and excited to have you on. We got introduced through a mutual friend, Alex Kremer, who is he's a friend of the podcast. So, man, I'm excited to learn more about your story and dive in. And maybe just for a quick second, we'll get into your story, but just for a quick second, just so I can let people know, Zach. Why should people be listening to Zach? Well, because he spent a number of years, climbing the ranks at Oracle. And a few other tech sales companies, was a regional sales director, and now is co-founding SIFT, which is for lack of a better term, a hot new sales tech startup, which we'll get into a little bit later in the pod. But Zach, tell me a little bit about. I know you were a football player in college, right? Tell me a little bit about like that journey, and I'm sure there's something tied to the competitive nature of football that probably led you to sales. So I'd love to, hear a little bit about like the genesis of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like sales had always been on my mind because I grew up and my dad was a software seller and grew through the ranks at Oracle in the 90s. So it's funny that I ended up getting a job there, but had a ton of his colleagues that I could call on and ask for guidance and mentorship. And I still have some of those. My godfather's even, he was a seller with my dad at IBM. And he's actually the CEO of a fintech company here in Texas. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, just that was a great upbringing, seeing the potential of what software sales could unlock. But yeah,
your dad was an OG.
Yeah. And like there were so many different problems back then, like Y2K and that type of like what happens when when it goes from 99 to 00, is the world gonna collapse kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting stuff, and just idolizing that lifestyle of selling software and going to President's Club and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They actually had the corporate parties back then in the 90s at Larry Ellison's house, which is pretty wild. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I ended up going to Trinity University. Like you said, I played football there, small D3 school. I wasn't ready to hang up the cleats. Let's just say that. But yeah, it was a great experience. Sales. I originally wanted to be a doctor, and go pre-med, kind of like 90% of people that go to a school like that. But with football, I wasn't able to cut it. So obviously I fell back to what I knew and I became a marketing major. But at football, yeah, definitely taught me how to have a consistent schedule, be consistently knocking down tasks towards a goal and working as a bigger part of a team, and knowing my 1/11th. They always say I played safety. So knowing doing my role, but then knowing what the linebacker in the corner and the D line was doing at all times, working on a team and going towards a bigger goal is definitely a life lesson that you can learn. So I cherish those times, even though I kind of didn't have a social life in college. Definitely cherish those times, and ended up getting an internship from a buddy of mine. He referred me into Oracle, and my junior year going into senior year, had an internship at Oracle. So it was great because at the end of the internship, they were able to offer me a role after graduation. So my senior year, second semester was pretty chill with like 9 credit hours, and just got a puppy and enjoyed life. It was great.
Nice. So I want to linger on your dad for a minute, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe even your godfather, just that whole generation. I know I've met a lot of people that used to sell at Oracle, IBM, Xerox, places like that in the 90s. And they were OGs, man. EMC. They were like sales savages back then. And it was really intense. And I've talked to a lot of guys that were successful that, they'd be saying, they'd be flying to China, like once a week, and like, red eye. And then you get off the plane, then you work for 16 hours, and just like a really kind of like work hard, play hard type of lifestyle. I'm just curious, like, and they were great salespeople, like great fundamentals. I feel like that they did a lot of training at those companies, especially like IBM. I know in particular, like had great sales training. So I'm just curious, like what, if any, like lessons, I don't know how much you talk shop with your dad, with your godfather, with his colleagues, like what, if so, what did they tell you? Any lessons that like really kind of shaped you from a sales perspective?
Yeah, so much. I think of my dad's team back at Oracle. That whole team, to show you how close they all were to my family, they were all at my wedding this past August. So it's like,
No kidding.
They knew me that well. I think there was a couple of years in a row where all 8 of them ended up going to President's Club. They all drove these Mercedes Benz. I think like the 90s was a pretty hot time to sell ERP software, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty incredible times for them. You think now, what, like everyone, our generation, it's all about getting the meeting, getting the opportunity, but that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to software sales, right? And when it comes to organizing a sales cycle, I'll use your word of the OGs, they are flawless at running these sales cycles.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes we're idolizing people that are just crushing meetings and getting pipeline, but we also need to remember there's this wealth of talent that's like 40 to 60 years old. And they're typically like, they're probably VP of sales at this point, but there's so much we can learn from them on taking it from like upside all the way to close. But yeah, just so many different things that I've been able to call on. Even my co-founder, Lee, his dad is in software sales, Craig Rogers. And I remember bringing up deal scenarios to him, and he was so excited just to like talk about certain problems that I was running into with a procurement guy. Any problem that you run into as a seller, these guys have run into it as well, right? So it's like being able to lean on a mentor like that, and the network that I've been able to inherit from my dad has been incredible. That and really inspired me to kind of become the seller that I am today, for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You're right about they're so dialed in, if we're stereotyping, but a lot of these folks they're so dialed in on like the sales process, handling it masterfully, building relationships where we'll get to this later, but I think a lot of us that have been selling virtually, that's it's different getting your face in the place, as they used to say in the early days of Salesforce, versus, doing everything over Zoom or Teams or something. And in the last part of like the family dynamic, that seems to be a generational thing too, where people really were like, they treated their coworkers like family. And they went on these trips together with their significant others and their kids. And, it's interesting that, so many of your dad's colleagues like came to your wedding. And that seems very in line with like the 90s, time frame, software sales, culture, from what I understand. And it just feels different now. I don't know if you felt differently at when you were at Oracle, and what you're building now at SIFT. I don't know the culture, but it feels like at companies that I have worked at, I don't, maybe 1 or 2 good friends I've had, but I'm not having 15 people from Gong when I get married to come. That's just not what's going to happen. So I don't know if that's a generational thing or what.
Yeah. It's things have changed big time, like just remote work, and COVID has really kind of pushed that in that direction. I love like I was just on Chris Bussing's podcast. I watched your time on his podcast as well, and yours. I love the audience that you guys are going towards, which is this individual that wants to get into tech sales, an SDR trying to grow into an AE. I love the fundamentals that you guys are putting out, like the content that you guys are putting out, just because COVID and work from home has really robbed that whole generation from an incredible foundation. You think of like when I was at Oracle starting in 2014, we had training classes once a week was technical. I used to have my own private trainings with my SC, and I'd ask him to train me for 30 minutes. And I try to like train back what I learned for the last 15. Like there's just these valuable interactions, even as much as like there was cubicles and everybody's lined up on the sales floor, and just hearing little nuggets of how someone's cold calling, or an objection that someone overcame, or even the feedback someone might give you after a call, even though it's very uncomfortable, people are listening to you speak to customers. That feedback is incredible. And I'd rather someone coach me up and mentor me and tell me when I'm doing something incorrect, so I don't keep doing it and sounding immature. But yeah.
Yeah, tell me, I want to learn about the Oracle days. So you get there, you have the internship, you get the full-time job as a BDR essentially. So you get in there summer of 2014. Now you have a little bit of a head start in terms of, I'm sure your dad has told you a little bit about, sales and, about how to do it probably. And you have the background in competitive sports, which I think helps as well with the discipline and, the organization and things like that. But it's a tough gig. So just walk me through, like, what was the first 3 to 6 months like you step into Oracle as a fresh college grad?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did is I had a friend that got me that internship. He was, his name's Logan Morrow. He ended up getting
Logan.
Oh yeah. Well, he ended up getting a regional sales director role. So I was like, man, I want to get this guy as a mentor. And then he ended up introducing me to his peers, and these people were mentoring me. And sure, you got to get your job done as we call them a BDC, business development consultant, but BDR, SDR, you name it. You got to get the job done, hit your pipeline, exceed your pipeline, get your KPIs. We had to do like 40 calls a week, or no, it was 40 calls a day, 200 calls a week, and 10 hours of talk time. And they actually tracked it, which was crazy. So people trying to hit these KPIs, it was a challenge. But half of my time was focused on, okay, this BDC role is, sure, it pays decent. It's not great pay, to be honest, right? But you got to think of this is a trial for the next role, which is the AE, right? Yep. So all I was doing is meeting with these different mentors. They would let me listen to calls on their team. And after the year was up, I had 4 or 5 offers of all those mentors. They wanted me to come on their team, and I ended up picking that guy, Logan Morrow, to work for. But it was just such a cool experience that I wasn't like comparing myself to everybody else and, oh, I've hit my quota, so now I'm just going to coast. But I was using that extra time to get mentored, listen to other people. We used to call it drive time, where you would actually like plug into their phone and listen, and like you were on mute. But you would actually go in and listen. I spent a lot of time taking what I learned, and even though I wasn't polished and wasn't an expert, I would try to teach others on the team. So already trying to like teach them best practices. And once I became an AE after the first year, I started this like this net new hunters group. It started with like 8 people, and it grew to like 150 people on the sales floor that I was just giving weekly trainings to. And I was like 23 years old. I barely knew how to spell B2B software. But I was just doing my best to take what is working and let's share that with the team and have an open network.
Okay. Let's put a pause there. So you're starting off, you're making how many calls were you saying a week?
We had a little ticker that you had to like mark off, and it was you had to average 200 calls a week and 10 hours of talk time. And that includes like your discovery calls and all that. So that's a lot. What was hard was, and I think this is a bad metric, but it was like, the call didn't count unless it was 10 seconds long. So you feel yourself leaving like a little bit longer of a voicemail, and you're like, this is dumb.
Every like 10 to 12 seconds counts when you're getting 10 hours of talk time in a week is a lot.
Yeah.
When you're cold calling, I mean, because you don't control how many people pick up the phone. And if you were working a stereotypical 9 to 5, that's a quarter of your time actually talking to people, which is it's I don't know if it's insane to me, but that's really high. That's like that's wild that's the metric, and you guys hit that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Gary Smith was my SDR director at the time. And he was very big into Sandler and all that stuff. So like we got to learn. The best thing about Oracle was they were not afraid to bring in Sandler trainers. There's this guy named Matt Benelli and Mike Myers at I think, they just started a new Sandler training org, but they're like probably the best sellers I've ever met. And then there was John Costigan, who came in with his prospecting training. John Costigan's one of the best. He actually prides himself on he actually makes cold calls for you in his training live in front of like 100 people.
That's legit.
So you would come with a contact and a talk track, and he would make it his own and cold call, and he would leave a voicemail. And how many times do people respond, like actually call you back from a voicemail? He would get people to call him back, and he'd be like, wait, Susie's calling. And then he would answer it, and he'd pretend to work at the company and set up a meeting. It was incredible. Some of that guy just has so much charisma. I was like, all right, this guy makes you want to run through a brick wall and go pick up the phone.
That's legit. That's wild. So I do want to spend some time on the, the Hunters Club. Is that what you called it? What was the name?
Yeah. It was just like this net new Hunters Club. It was, we would just pick a topic, and there was another individual, Jess Harper. She went on to Google Cloud, and Matt Mitchell went on to Snowflake and is wildly successful. There was just like these other people that were making waves and closing net new business. I think that first year I had like 50 transactions. A lot of those, they were like repeat customers, but it was just like we were getting such high velocity of deals that it was insane. So management gave us the freedom, which was incredible, to just like lead these trainings, and we could talk about whatever we want. And we'd pick different prospecting strategies, what's working, what's not working. And it like really excited me to get into sales leadership, because I could see the light bulb going off. The hard part is the whole floor is coming to you for questions, which is difficult when you're like, you feel like you barely got it together yourself, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I'm curious, because I talk to a lot of SDRs and AEs all the time. And, SDR might come to me or might be part of my boot camp and say, hey, I've been an SDR for 9 months. I'm doing well. I'm hitting my numbers, and, I'm not getting promoted or something like that. One of the things I ask is like, well, what are you doing outside of hitting your numbers?
Bingo.
And a lot of people come back with like, why would people want to hear from me? Why, what do I have to offer? I'm just an SDR, I've only been doing this 9 months. So what gave you the confidence to say, I'm going to offer up like what I'm doing to help at first maybe 8 people, and then turned into like triple digits amount of people, when you're so new to the game? Like, what gave you the confidence? What gave you the thought that, I'm able to help people out?
Yeah. What I loved was like, it didn't matter how old you were. It mattered what percentage of your quota you were, and people followed what was working. And I really appreciated that. It gave me a ton of confidence when people are coming to me and asking, what am I doing differently, just to like have such stellar numbers there. So yeah, it was just like setting aside some time and focusing on mentoring people. And I felt like if I could teach it, I was actually going in, because Oracle's famous for having really complex licensing, as an example, right? They've got their on-prem world, but they also have their cloud world, which has come a long way and made it a lot more simplified. But the on-prem side of the house, you basically needed like a PhD in Oracle licensing. And I got really good at that from learning from other like really high performing sellers and RSDs. And I started becoming the de facto trainer for some of the new hires on just, okay, this is how you license. And it was so complex, but because I did a lot of these trainings and public speakings, I was becoming so much more confident, and my talk track was getting so much better, because a lot of pitching is just practicing, right? Like understanding the challenges that your customers are facing and the value statements that you can align to, which is a lot of what we're trying to automate at SIFT now.
Yeah.
But it was just another area to grow my personal development, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm spending a lot of time here is like a lot of folks that listen to this podcast, they're SDRs or they're AEs. They want to get to the next level, if that's get promoted to AE or enterprise or manager.
Yeah.
And, hitting your numbers is table stakes. Being at the top
Yeah.
of the leaderboard is the table stakes. And then finding opportunities to help your business. You were not getting paid to do these trainings.
No.
It didn't help you. I mean, I guess it did. It probably made you better. Teaching helps you get better, but it didn't really, in the nuts and bolts, help you hit quota. Some would say your time could have been better spent making an extra hour of phone calls because you would have been higher percent to quota, but you were, kind of thinking a little bit more strategically. And so I do want to just point that out. And to carry it along a little bit in your journey, I know you, at some point you left Oracle after a little bit, you went to, I believe, Informatica, then boomerang back over to Oracle as a sales director. Talk to me about what was your thought process? Like you seem to have a natural inclination to lead others.
Yeah.
What was your philosophy, or what was kind of like the way that you led the team when you were a sales manager or sales director?
Yeah, and real quick before we move on, because you made
Yeah.
a really interesting comment, like an SDR came to you with 9 months experience. Why am I not getting promoted? I would say have patience in this role, right? Like this SDR role. It typically is 1 year at the earliest, and 2 years is typical. But if you leave this company and go to another company, they're not just going to plug you in as an AE. They're going to want you to be an SDR. So you just took not just a lateral step, but kind of a step back, because now you got to hit that year in general. I've been mentoring some upcoming seniors and new AEs and new SDRs. And a lot of the times you got to just focus on not comparing yourself to everybody else, and compare yourself to yourself, right? So if you're if you're the top 1%, a lot of people will just coast because, oh, I'm the best here, right? Like, if you're comparing your activity to yourself, you're not gonna fall complacent. And a lot of that's the hard part about not having that camaraderie in this hybrid workforce. But no, I just wanted to plug that in, just because a lot of folks get a little antsy around month 9. You feel like you got it going on. You feel like you could, oh, that's easy, I could have done that. But there is a lot that goes into that AE role that it's good to have that first year with the training wheels on, for sure. Diving back in, I boomeranged back to Oracle. It was so refreshing. Chris Gandolfo is the SVP there. He changed their entire culture on the cloud side. And that's where I joined. And I joined the guy that was my manager in my first role, Alex Baird. He hired me because he stayed and became a VP, and he hired me as a frontline sales manager. And I inherited this team. And a lot of them had like 1-2 years experience, which is typically not the field seller pedigree, right? Like typically a field seller's got maybe 5 or 6 years of inside sales experience, maybe 2 to 4 on like the lower end. Yeah. But I focused on, all right, how can I develop these individuals and get them confident to where they can start running their own sales cycles individually, but just getting them in person and out in the field. Remember, this is 2021. So it's like 2020 and 2021. So it's like the end of COVID, where no one's really traveling, but we were just like, all right, you had to have like a justification to Gandolfo, the SVP, of why you had to travel. But we just were like, all right, well, let's just make a bunch of justifications and go see customers. Right. Yeah. And I went in territory with these reps and just got to see them take meeting after meeting and gain so much confidence. And it was so hard to leave to go start SIFT, because you build such incredible relationships with your team, your frontline, like your reps. They're out there working their ass off, prospecting, finding new deals. They're developing themselves. We actually to grow some of these skills that they might have missed in like this COVID world. It was so funny. Like when we went back to the office, all of them, it was like their first time working in an office. So they were all excited to go into the office. I was like, wow, this is so backwards from before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we did a book club together as a team, and we did a book a quarter. And on Sundays, I would prepare like a slide deck. And we started with Sandler, and we did Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I know you're a big Voss fan.
Yeah.
And we did How to Tell a Good Story. And we did some other selling books. But it was just so great to, like, everybody was reading the chapters and we were kind of collaborating on it and try to develop their skill sets. And that's way outside of their like their job description, right? Like, who said you have to build a book report as a salesperson? But like, if you can learn to tell good stories and learn to negotiate and learn to prospect and learn how to run a deal, that's so valuable. And they're like, it was so cool to see them put it into action. Like, okay, as uncomfortable as it is to have a formal upfront contract, let's see you do it on this call, you know? And like, it was just so cool to see these individuals progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the notion of getting in person and getting on the road. I actually I was talking to someone about this this week that, I found myself I'm 4 months into running this business, and the first like 3 months of it, overcomplicating a lot of things and building out all these sales sequences and trying to sell to all these cold people. And the thing that's made a huge difference in the last month is two things. Is one, like, just seems obvious, but leveraging my LinkedIn network more and leveraging the fact that I live in the third biggest city in the country, in Chicago, and just grabbing coffee with people and lunch with people. And I've done that. And in the last few weeks, I've probably done that once a day or maybe 3 or 4 days a week where I'm on the road, grabbing a coffee with someone. And that has led to deals, that has led to referrals. It's led to, a lot of great things that I just feel like it takes longer on Zoom, and it's not as fun on Zoom, to be honest with you. I wish me and you were in person right now, at a table, and I don't, Zoom is necessary, I think, for the way of the world. But if you have an opportunity to get out in front of customers, whether it's making a business case to your VP to get on a plane, or if you have a regional territory and you can get in your car or something like that, man, that's where I think I still think that's where real deals get done. I still think that's the best way, the best use of most salespeople's time. If you are an AE and you're closing anything significant, deal size, it's not super, transactional.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. At Informatica, I covered Cincinnati for a year, and I can't remember the amount of trips, but on the year I did 100 segments, just to give you like that's a lot of flight segments in general. It was just back and forth to Cincinnati. But what did I do? The first thing I did when I joined Informatica, before I went through training, before I went through anything, I learned, okay, give me 5 customer win stories from the website. And I just went in territory and I dropped off 10 handwritten notes. And that ended up getting 3 opportunities. And I ended up getting lunch with a CIO that was just available. And I just showed up and I was like, yeah, I flew here from Austin, Texas to meet this guy. I'd love to just shake his hand while I'm here. And like, they let me go shake the CIO's hand. And he's like, well, I'm free for lunch. You want to go grab lunch? It was insane.
Hold up. Okay. I need more. All right. So you're in Austin, your territory is Cincinnati. Whatever companies they are, you don't have to say them, but you say, all right, I'm going to target these 10, these are my A accounts, write them a letter. You're going to drop it off at the business headquarters. What's in the letter, and what do you say to the person when you're dropping it off that then leads to this lunch? Because I'm going to steal this move next week.
I love playing the new card, man. For like a whole year, I was new to the company, to customers. Like people love helping people that are lost or like they're new to a situation. And I would just tell them exactly how it is. Like, hey, I am brand new to the company, but I chose to work at Informatica because they were the leaders in X, Y, and Z. I'm just here to create relationships. I want to understand what you guys are doing, and see if we can help. I ended up parlaying that into Informatica was sponsoring this golf event at the Memorial Golf Tournament, and ended up taking that CIO to that Memorial Golf Tournament. We're following Tiger and we're having the time of our life. And no doubt he signed the deal, right? Like, people buy from people they like, and they justify the reasoning whenever like it makes sense, right? And you can sell value and align to their business. But you are 100% spot on. If it's me versus massive competitor A, and we're kind of neck and neck, and I'm there with the personal relationship's going to win 10 out of 10 times, or at least 9 out of 10 times. You can never be 100%, but I would say building relationships as a field seller is your number one job. I said this on Chris's podcast, but one of my mentors, Tyler Robbins, he talks about create raving fans of your product and the results of your partnership, and the revenue will take care of itself, right? Like, if you're just more focused on how can I make this person successful, make them look good in their job. It was always my goal at Informatica. I got 3 of my customers on the website. That was like my goal. And my ultimate win was get their logo and their win story on the website. I also got a chief data officer to do a webinar for us, hook them up with marketing, get them to, my customers were the ones that were doing quotes for our data sheets and stuff like that. You know, it's like, if you're doing that, then you're making successful customers, and you're building a brand for yourself that is just far and above different than a sleazy car salesman, which is unfortunately sometimes what comes across on a first impression. That's why cold calling is so difficult, right? But if you can show that you're a human, especially by going in person, like night and day difference on what you're able to accomplish.
I was listening to, I don't know why, but I went down a rabbit hole of this guy. I forget his name, but he just bought the Suns this year. He's like 42. And he owns the biggest. Cool. Sorry?
I said, that's cool. They just got Durant.
Yeah. He started like the week before they got Durant. That was like the first thing he did. And he's 42 and he owns like the biggest mortgage company in the world. And I was listening to a podcast on him, and he said the same thing. He's like, we do happen to own that business, and he's worth like $7 billion. But he's like, I don't think about money. I do the right things. And whenever I'm successful, the money follows. So I focus on winning. I focus on the success. I focus on doing the right thing. And I've never done that, and the money hasn't followed. And so it's easy as a sales rep, especially when you're new in seat, especially when maybe your company's hitting a tough spot, financially, maybe when, the economy's in a tough spot, to focus on the quota, to focus on the deal. That's really easy to do. But if you focus on the success, you focus on winning, you focus on getting your customer on the website. My customers are going to be successful. Good things follow from that. So that's just been really top of mind for me this week. It's just a reminder to myself.
Yeah. And I think, like you talk about like focusing on the deal and the quota, which in most sales cultures, it's front and center, right? It's a big focus for everybody. I think it's a great reason to always bring in your leadership and not work isolated on an island. Because if they're a part of the deal cycle and it falls apart, they kind of understand why, because they have the intricate details, and you didn't lose by yourself, right? If you lose enough deals by yourself, you're probably fired, right? Totally. But include these leaders. And hey, they also are incredible sellers. They didn't become a VP of sales for nothing. So that was something that I was able to do at these massive corporations, was use all of these brilliant people and bring them in when it made sense, and not lose by yourself. I think that's a big one. When you're talking about like, hey, quota is front and center, it's tough not to like just do whatever it takes. But sometimes if you're focusing on how can I create raving fans and include your leadership, like you're still going to keep your job if you miss your quota or whatever it might be. But the hope is you get enough at bats that these deals take care of themselves, you know?
Yeah. And that was, I love the create raving fans. That was, that's one of Gong's principles. And that was like the number one thing that they said in every team meeting. They had like 5 or 6 values that they lived by. And that was probably the one they brought up the most. It was like, if we create raving fans, we're going to win. So, you could do that on a micro level, of course, as an AE, as a salesperson. Zach, I want to talk about starting SIFT. You started SIFT with a few co-founders about a year ago, I believe. And I want to talk about SIFT the business side in a minute. But first I want to ask, you clearly have a passion for sales. You have a passion for developing others, for leading people. I don't know what your comp plan was like at Oracle, but I imagine you're making some pretty good money. Imagine you had some RSUs going. I imagine you're probably hitting quota. Things are going good. And then you go to, start a business, which is the opposite of that financially in the early days. So why, like just personally, why did you decide to make that move?
Yeah. And my co-founder, Lee, he always says, I want to work on cool problems with people that I love. And like, I've known my co-founder since the 4th grade.
That's sweet.
Yeah. And then we met our CTO through a really close friend of ours. And Peter, he came with an incredible background. He worked at Optimizely. He was leading some of the largest website digital optimization programs at like Nike and Charles Schwab. And I think they were working with both presidential candidates on their website at one point. But he's like, yeah, we came to him with, hey, we want to build this, but we don't we're not Lee's technical, but we needed some back end work. And Peter was like, yeah, we can do this, no problem. And it was funny how this like all came together, because Lee worked at Workday and Oracle for the same amount of time that I was working. And we really saw the need out there for something like SIFT. We just had to go build it, but it was very rewarding. Every deal that you close, it's funny because like the deal sizes that we close would have been like a drop in the bucket compared to my quota at Oracle. Sure. But I'm more proud of every single deal that closes. We had this upfront deal that closed, and it was like our first one, and we were framing the PO on the wall, and we framed our first dollar. I'm looking at it over across the office here. But it's just so rewarding to work with really cool people that like are just very innovative and trying to create the future of B2B sales. It's like, and to think about it abstractly, it's difficult. One on like I'm going to use attention management, not time management, very purposefully, but where you spend your time as a co-founder is the hardest part, right? So like once you're starting, you've got all of these functions, and I'm the only person that's really doing outbounding, prospecting, marketing, all this kind of stuff. Then you think of, okay, we got customers, we got to onboard them, we got to train them. There's a lot of different hats that you wear that you take for granted from a big company like an Oracle or an Informatica, where they're like, oh yeah, now we just hand it to the customer success team and marketing has all these leads coming to us. Yeah. But if you start just focusing on systems, like, oh, this is my outbounding prospecting and what system I'm going to do here, and it's yielding this result, I'm just going to focus on that for a while until I perfect it. And now what I've been doing recently is trying to get on, like, just do very consistent social media content. And I'm really inspired by what you are doing and what Chris is doing. I feel like YouTube Shorts, I think, could be like a really good avenue for me. Yeah. But I'm starting to see inbound leads from that. So like that's a whole different system that I can invest in, and just start perfecting these systems that it's not overwhelming, right? Versus if you think about it all at once, you could burn out really quickly, just because you're overwhelmed of what's going on. And that's it's just how I've been approaching it.
Yeah. I love that. I love and I relate deeply to the every small, size is relative, but every like small deal means so much more, is so It just feels so good. And, I actually felt as an AE, I was an AE for / sales manager. I had both those roles for like 7-8 years. And I felt with each year, for me personally, at least, the satisfaction of closing a deal, even a big deal, 6-figure deal, 7-figure deal, kept getting smaller, and I kept like feeling less joyed by it. And now like I close $1,000 deal or something, and I'm like, bang, I got a gong right here, and I'm like banging the gong, and I'm like stoked, and it feels good. And, it's a different, it's just a different feeling. And it's just a more, for me at least, more fulfillment coming from it. And if that's not, some people are AEs for 50 years and they love it, and that's great too. But I think just kind of leaning into where are you getting your satisfaction from, and, ranking that, as well as maybe what you might be making, compensation wise. And it's all a part of an equation of what might be the best path for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sucked because like I left a really good situation. But I had saved up for this type of experience. And if this doesn't work out for whatever reason, and I am very confident about where we're headed, but like worst case, it's like I got an MBA, and running a company. And I'm dealing with sales leaders at all times and building this brand in sales. I feel like I could get a gig wherever I want. So it's not like I'm worried about looking backwards or anything like that. I'm just looking forward, and I've got a co-founder share of this company, and just thinking about the experience I'm getting and the opportunity that's ahead of us. We just got to go execute, and get out there and make the most out of our brand. So that's kind of where our team is focusing on.
Yeah, I love it. So before we get to some of the rapid fires, why don't you just educate the audience if they don't know Sift with a Y, by the way. Tell us a little bit about like what you guys are doing in the space.
Yeah, it's siftai.com if you want to check it out, or like feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow our LinkedIn page. What we're doing is we're uniting the revenue team to value sell, right? And it's everything prior to that first outreach. There's so much that goes into a day-to-day seller in their territory planning. Which accounts should they be prioritizing and going after? How do I collaborate with my SDR from like a territory management perspective? How do I create value messaging? And we're using generative AI to create some of this value messaging, but doing it in a really unique way, where since we have the consolidated research about all of the prospects in your territory and what you care about, we're surfacing challenges that these prospects are probably facing, cross-referencing that with your solution to have value statements. So then we can plug those value statements and use generative AI to create value emails. So you see how it was a little bit more logical of a process versus just asking ChatGPT to write you an email, which could be creative writing that's far from the truth or outdated info. We're really focusing on how can my solution solve my prospect's problem and create a value story for them. And that content generation has been really exciting for a lot of folks that are trying to adopt ChatGPT into their sales processes. And just overall, companies are paying a ton of money for just siloed parts of what Sift can offer. And it's just drowning the users in more and more data. So what we're trying to say is we're offering this single horizontal experience from all those areas that I talked about. And we're doing it at a much better cost than a lot of these siloed players that are just data providers.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And longtime listeners of this pod will know that I don't have just anyone on the podcast. I actually believe in what you guys are doing. This is not a paid partnership by any means. Just I enjoy getting to know you, and I think what you're doing is cool. But there's a lot of people that, prospect me and other podcasters to try to get, on their podcast. And so,
I prospected you. You'll see your DMs. I literally wrote a note to you saying how I want to be on the podcast. It's funny that it worked out. I just got an introduction through someone else.
That's what we're talking. That's a good sales lesson right there. Is if your cold outreach isn't working, to always lean on the mutual connections. No, but it's just to emphasize that. Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is really cool. and commend you for the work, and excited to see where you guys take it. All right, I want to pivot to some rapid fires to close us out here. So first up, we're big readers on this podcast. I'm not sure if you're a reader or not. If you are, I'd love to hear any books that have impacted you, as a person. They could be a sales book. It could be a completely different topic. But anything that stands out as like really impactful for you, books you recommend to others, anything you've read good recently. Curious where your mind goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a ton on VCs just because like that's a area of weakness of mine, right? Like, it's like you learned Spanish 2 years ago and you're negotiating with someone that's fluent, right? So you got to really learn the verbiage, like Secrets of Sand Hill Road and some other VC books that I've been reading. If I go back to my sales books, like I couldn't not say Chris Voss Never Split the Difference. I feel like everyone says that, but if you actually listen to it, it's so entertaining. As some background, it's a lead FBI hostage negotiator, and he's talking about different negotiation lessons through different hostage negotiations. And like the second chapter will change your life on how he negotiates with a bank robber, Chris Watts. And I just go back to that chapter and listen to it sometimes. But yeah, I have books that I go back to all the time that I've sticky noted or whatever. You can never read a sales book too many times because it all runs together and you got to refresh yourself.
Yep. What goes on in the headphones for Zach Wright music wise?
Oh man, I like a lot of indie stuff. There's been a lot of cool guys that come through here. We just saw Kaleo live. We're going to see Dermot Kennedy live. I also like rap, anything. You'd also be surprised. Like I have a pretty diverse set of music. We just went to the Taylor Swift concert. I went with my wife. She was all sparkled up and she loved it. Big time Swiftie. So yeah.
Respect to Swift. Okay. So
and she did 4 hours, no, 3.5 hours, 44 songs she didn't take longer than a 3.5 minute break. I was like, and that was just to change into another outfit. I'm like, damn, respect to the hustle of Taylor Swift doing this 50 times this year. Like her music or not, you gotta love the hustle and what she's doing.
There's something to be learned from the top at anything. And she is the top. Again, take your preference of her music aside. The way that she's making bank, the way that she's making headlines, the way that she has, millions and millions of people captivated by everything she does, including her recent breakup and maybe her new crush or whatever. I don't know. My girlfriend was telling me about that last night.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
It's like, you got to respect that. And there's something to be learned about just like masters of a craft.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny is she was like, I think FTX tried to pay her like $100 million to be a spokesperson, and she ended up turning them down. I'm like, wow, how did she know that this was going to be such a scandal that she avoided it? I just thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I got 2 more questions for you. Number one is, what's something you do? You mentioned music a little bit, but what's something else you do outside of work that helps you kind of like maintain your mental health?
Yeah. Well, I take walks every day with my wife. She's actually pregnant. We're expecting in September. So we walk with our dogs. I have a very close community here in Austin of just some folks that are either in software sales or entrepreneurs of their own companies. And I love hanging out with them, shooting the shit. What are they doing? What challenges are they facing? Try to stay fit. I've been more into mental health and certainly getting into getting back in shape since I've become a co-founder. It's funny, like in my 9 to 5 before, it was so hard to like make my own schedule and prioritize myself and my mental health, and some of the things that if you're not taking care of will burn you out 10 out of 10 times. So just focusing on that and getting prepared to bring a new life into the world is pretty crazy. Even though my wife will listen to this and she'll probably laugh her ass off, like, he didn't do anything. But like, she's doing all the hard work. But yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to your wife and congrats.
Yeah, she's
My
in France
last,
right now, seeing her family.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. My last selfish question for you is, who is someone that you'd want to see come on this podcast?
Man. So my like one of my mentors, Tyler Robbins, probably one of the best sellers I've met. I think he would crush it. If you didn't already know Chris, I would have introduced you to Chris.
Yeah, I am going to have Chris Bussing on for those that aren't familiar. I like
Yeah.
Tyler Robbins. I've never even met him. I like him because his name's so close to Tony Robbins that I feel like I'm going to like him. That's where I'm
Yeah.
at right now.
Yeah. I just introduced him to Alex Kremer and he loved him. I'm trying to get all of us to go to your big sales retreat in July.
Yeah.
I love the thought of getting sales leaders together and just talking about what's working, what's not working. I think you said there's some cool things like a cold plunge and some like things to test your limits. So I'm really interested in that and hopefully we can make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope to see you there. And for those that aren't interested, I will take the moment to give a free ad and say that we're doing a 3-day sales retreat, July 14th to 16th in lovely Austin, Texas. And yeah, learn about sales, talk about the inner game, build community. All right. End ad there. But Zach,
I love
appreciate
that,
you.
by the way. I
Yeah.
love that. Big
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I hope to get to meet you in person, whether or not you come to the retreat, just when I come down to Austin and grab some food and hang out a little bit. And I just want to give you a chance to let people know where to best find you, any last words you have. And again, thank you for your time and just the commitment that you make to helping the sales community get better.
Yeah. Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Zach Wright Sift. And I have not started my YouTube journey yet, but I want to in the near future. So look out for that. But yeah, thanks so much for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it. I'm really impressed by what you've built with this podcast and just some of the guests that you've had on here are incredible. But yeah, thanks so much for spending an hour with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. And we'll stay tuned for the YouTube shorts. I hope to be checking some of those out. But thanks for coming on. Thanks to everyone for listening. I again highly recommend everyone go connect with Zach. Let him know what you liked about the episode. Check out Syft, SYFT. And again, thanks Zach for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom.